If the judgment is that linear positioning is appropriate, it's typically executed as follows. The response vehicle is parked in a straight line directly upstream of the first incident vehicle within the same lane. Sufficient space should be left between the responder vehicle and any incident vehicles so that the responder vehicle will not hit the incident vehicles in the event it's struck by oncoming traffic. Once the blocking vehicle is parked, the wheels must be cut to their critical wheel angle so that if struck from the rear, the responder vehicle is not pushed into the work area. Please note that for police vehicles on traffic stops, studies have concluded that the following recommended configuration is optimal, as described in Law Enforcement Stops and Safety Subcommittee Staff Study 2004. Patrol vehicle angle, 0 degrees. Patrol vehicle steering, minus 25 degrees. Patrol vehicle offset, 50%. Patrol vehicle distance, 15 feet. In some situations, the response vehicle may be parked with a slight block, meaning a slight angle. This slight block does not close additional lanes. A slight block to the left or to the right closes that lane equally. If possible, select the slight block direction that indicates to approaching traffic which direction to merge. Lane closure is an integral part of block positioning. It's important that responders understand that closing lanes negatively affects commerce, costs governments and companies money, delays drivers, and can result in secondary collisions occurring in the back of traffic trying to get past the incident scene. Lane closure is often necessary to protect responders from being struck. Lane closure can actually contribute to quicker clearance of the incident because responders have more room to work and can remain focused on their response tasks. Safe Practices for Traffic Incident Responders advises taking only as many lanes as you need for only as long as you need them. As the incident is cleared, lanes can be progressively reopened. The rule of thumb when using block positioning is lane plus 1, with the shoulder counting as a lane. Be aware that the plus 1 lane may actually be clear of the incident. The purpose of taking that additional lane or lanes is to give responders room to work safely and efficiently by creating an adequate buffer space between those who are feet on the street and the moving traffic. This is especially important in incidents where fire suppression or patient care activities are needed. Here's just one example of the importance of lane plus 1. Remember that every incident is different, and it's up to the appropriate personnel to determine what lanes should be closed and when to reopen them. These images show many different examples of how block positioning can be properly implemented at the scene. At the most basic level, block positioning uses response vehicles, typically but not exclusively fire apparatus, parked at an angle to the lanes of traffic to create a physical barrier between upstream traffic and the work area, thereby halting the flow of moving traffic in one or more lanes. How and where this block is positioned is influenced by many factors, including the characteristics of the incident, lane location of the incident, type of roadway, visibility, weather conditions, traffic volume and speed, response needs, and available apparatus. Let's focus on how the block positioning is done. Block positioning can be done by any response vehicle. In most cases, the first arriving vehicle executes the block. If this initial block is a smaller vehicle, like a police cruiser or an ambulance, it's often replaced with heavier apparatus, such as a fire truck, once that unit arrives. Heavier apparatus provide more protection because they move less when struck and better handle impacts from larger vehicles. In the case of an ambulance that's the initial arriving unit and therefore the initial blocking vehicle, patient care may take place. But patients should not be loaded in until another response vehicle has assumed a blocking position upstream of the ambulance to protect its loading zone from exposure to oncoming traffic. For high-speed, multi-lane divided highway traffic incident responses, many jurisdictions dispatch a second fire apparatus, typically a fire department pumper, ladder truck, or tanker because of their size and weight. This second apparatus has the primary function of acting as the blocking vehicle, not working the scene. This apparatus typically positions in a block to the left or block to the right, approximately 100 feet upstream of the units working at the incident scene in most situations. This second unit, however, must take into consideration reasons why the approaching motorist's line of sight to the incident would be impaired and adjust the unit's position accordingly. The supervisor of this second arriving unit considers hills, curves, bad weather, or any other roadway obstruction feature and positions appropriately. Parking more than 300 feet upstream is not recommended due to the danger of motorists cutting back in before actually passing the incident. This apparatus provides protection and early advance warning of the incident ahead, critical when traffic is traveling at fast highway speeds. Blocking vehicles are parked upstream of the incident between the buffer space and the workspace. Their presence creates a shadow, safe work area at the incident workspace location. Blocking vehicles are typically preceded by advance warning measures, and in and of themselves they provide some advance warning through visibility, lights, chevrons, and arrow boards. Blocking vehicles are parked at an angle, so approaching traffic understands that the blocking vehicle is stopped and parked. It's more difficult to identify whether a vehicle is moving when it's parked in a linear position. Block positioning vehicles can be parked block to the left, meaning anchored towards the median, or block to the right, meaning anchored towards the outside shoulder. This simply refers to the angle or direction that the blocking vehicle is set, front to the left or front to the right. The selection of block to the left or block to the right depends on the incident, where the unit is parked in the roadway, and how it will be utilized while blocking. Factors to consider include whether equipment on the blocking vehicle will have to be accessed for response operations, and if so, what equipment and where is it located on the apparatus. This may require positioning the vehicle on the opposite side of oncoming traffic. The direction of oncoming traffic, with an eye toward optimizing traffic flow as advised in the latest issue of the National MUTCD and/or your state's MUTCD. Giving first responders accessing the vehicle the most protection as they operate onboard equipment like the pump, retrieve items, and enter and exit the vehicle. The location of the incident, visibility, and the needs and parking requirements of other response vehicles expected to arrive. Remember that, all things being equal, if the block can place the blocking vehicle physically in a direction or angle that you want the motorist to merge from one lane to another, then choose that blocking position. The degree of the angle should be chosen to properly block the number of lanes required and provide the most protection to those at the incident scene. Once the blocking vehicle is parked, the wheels must be cut to their critical wheel angle so that, if struck from the rear, the responder vehicle is not pushed into the work area. This is achieved by turning the steering wheel all the way to the left or all the way to the right, whichever direction turns the wheels away from the protected activity area. The vehicle operator now must set the parking brake and initiate stationary light shedding procedures according to NFPA standards, department protocol, and apparatus capabilities. Note that a wheel chock should be set as well once the vehicle has been safely exited. Block positioning can be used on any type of roadway. Let's look at an example of a two-lane rural road. In this scenario, two vehicles have crashed in the southbound lane. If the first arriving response vehicle, in this case a fire engine, approaches traveling south, it can be positioned blocked to the left, as shown here, by simply pulling up at the proper angle to block the shoulder and the single lane. If the fire engine were to approach traveling north, it can assume this same position upstream on the southbound side by simply pulling across the yellow line with its front toward the shoulder instead of toward the northbound lane. More than one vehicle can be used in block positioning. For example, other vehicles, such as police cars, can be used upstream of the main block to provide additional advance warning and further slow traffic. For incidents of longer duration, safety patrols and/or DOT vehicles may become involved in providing either additional blocking/advance warning or in replacing working or departing apparatus as the blocking vehicle. Once blocking vehicles are parked, responders must know how to safely exit and work around them. Each agency should have procedures for safe execution of these actions. This last point is especially important if the blocking vehicle is actively working the scene, such as a fire engine engaged in fire suppression operations. When operating at the scene around a blocking vehicle, it's important to recognize that the blocking position creates a zero buffer hazard area. This means that when the responder passes by the blocking vehicle at the furthermost point of the angle, which is typically the front left or front right corner of the blocker, there's very little room to walk where the approaching traffic comes close to the blocking vehicle. There's almost no room to maneuver or escape in this space. Here is what can happen. To safely pass through this zero buffer area, approach from the protected side, stop at each corner and check for approaching traffic. If it's clear, proceed along the unit as closely to the blocking vehicle as possible. Perform the tasks such as retrieving equipment while constantly checking for approaching traffic. Move to the protected side of the vehicle once the task is complete, rather than go back through the zero buffer area. Do not turn your back to moving traffic. Remain exposed to traffic for as short a time as possible. The angle in block positioning creates a shadow immediately downstream of the block. This imaginary shadow provides a work area where responders can perform their duties in an environment protected from traffic. Here we see how all this comes together into an ideal positioning scheme at this particular incident. The first responding vehicle, a police cruiser, initially positions the unit in a blocking posture and radios incident details to the other responding units. The fire truck arrives next. The fire apparatus is longer, larger, and heavier weight than the police car. The fire apparatus assumes an upstream block to the left or block to the right position that creates a lane +1 protected work area for responders. The position and angle are selected to create an appropriately sized work area while still providing access to equipment used in the response. This frees up the police officer and/or firefighters to deploy cones and signs for advance warning and to further protect the work area from traffic cutting back in after the fire truck. When the ambulance arrives, it's able to take advantage of the shadow to park within the work area downstream of the incident with its loading doors angled away from traffic. This enables EMS to have room to work on patients and load them in without stepping into traffic. DOT arrives with its arrow board in the advance warning/transition area to further direct traffic around the blocking vehicles and thus the work area. Finally, when towing and recovery arrives, they're able to park downstream and wait for their opportunity to load and remove disabled vehicles, easily driving